Vichy of the former Soviet regime. The new Russia wanted to get off vodka. The Russian market is to be conquered. Jean-Marie really understands it.
Hello! Bonjour!
Bonjour!
Quite a ham, this Jean-Marie. The patriarch of the bourgeois begins a marathon roadshow in the best restaurants of Moscow with Daria, the representative of the importing company. With perfectly well-polished speech, a charming tour around the very influential young Muscovite sommeliers is about to start.
Je propose d'abord que...
Let's taste it.
Avant de déguster un sushi sashimi. Non, trop bien.
With this wine, you have several vintages. Jadis, the Chêne Saint-Étienne, the third one, Clos Henri of New Zealand. I brought several soil samples so you can understand a bit about it. These sediments can be found on the big hillside in Chavignol. You can find it. It's called the Côte des Mondanais. I'd like you to go there. The best wine of this region is called Jadis. Once, because it's a very traditional wine without any chemical substances. Really traditional. You do really enjoy meeting winemakers? Would you like to meet some more?
Потому что плох тот производитель, который не знает людей, которые пьют его вино. Сидя на одном месте, невозможно узнать весь мир.
People and encounters make me learn a lot of things, and I'm still learning a lot by meeting people. For me, it's a passion to share my know-how. And I don't come here to say, here I am, bourgeois. No, I come here to talk with people, to share real knowledge, and to share what I've learned. Plus the pleasure of being in Sancerre.
Il va venir le voir, Sanchez. La place rouge était vide. Devant moi marchait Nathalie. Elle avait un joli nom, mon guide. Nathalie. La place rouge était blanche. La neige avait fait un tapis. Et devant ce froid immense, Nathalie. Elle parlait en phrases sobres de la révolution d'octobre.
People always say Russians, only some Russians have money and the rest of them are really poor. Sure, there are still poor people, but more and more Russians have money. Just look at the cars in the streets. It's really, really important. More and more Russians have enough money to buy big cars and to drink foreign wines, to create really good restaurants. You have to follow this evolution. It's essential in our job. Is the Russian market an important one? It's becoming important. It has quite an importance. For me, it's currently as important as Belgium or Germany. I take it into consideration as a real market, and I take care of it. Not like a complementary market. How does a market like Russia represent in your exportations? Oh, an important one. Important.
Выходим на новый костюм.
don't know if he came. No, he came for the opening. That's it, that's great.
C'est super. Kofi Annan.
I always appreciate being in such a legendary place.
Ah, Dimitri.
Very proud to see his family name written on the menu of the mythic Pushkin Cafe, the showman becomes a kid. To place his wine on the greatest tables of the world is not only a question of money.
How many wines from the Bourgeois Domaine or from New Zealand are there on the menu? What kinds of wine do they have? The red bourgeois is only sold in magnum bottles. It's offered to companies coming for dinner. We think that it develops the wine. It evolves better in a magnum bottle.
И белое вино представлено как раз Chaîne Saint-Étienne.
Et les vins blancs, ils sont présentés par les vins de la chaîne Saint-Étienne.
Ah, d'accord. Rien que les beaux vins de la maison. Bravo.
Et les gens ici.
And people here keep on asking for the Sancerre name, which is really well known.
Sancerre, surtout, qui est très bien connu.
I'm not the only one to do Sancerre wine, but I was one of the first to put Sancerre in this kind of place. And I'm really proud to somewhat popularize Sancerre around the world. When I sell a bottle of Sancerre wine in Moscow, I promote the name.
Many people in the region really believe that Noah's Ark arrived in Chavagnols. The first animal to disembark was a goat, and the first tree planted was the vine. So, if this little village is mostly renowned for its goat's cheese, its vineyard is one of the most important in the Sancerre. Its vines are composed of 20% Pinot Noir and 80% Sauvignon. We are now here near the Loire, and we benefit from the microclimate. The weather is never very cold, and the humidity rate is always ideal. The soil is perfectly adapted. In fact, the sea used to cover the region 165 million years ago, and when it moved back, it left a fertile land composed of clay and limestone full of sediments. It's not an accident that if for centuries men want to grow vines in Chavagnols. However, it's impossible. The village is small and exploitations run in the family. There is no land to sell. The Chavagnols people like their specificity, and that's why they are called the Corsicans of Sancerre.
Allez, là, Pascal, là. Là, là.
Ah, faut bien faire passer.
Allez, prenons des rangs. Allez-y. Accélère.
It's the beginning of the grape harvest. We just started. We've been working in the wines for a year now, a year trying to give them the greatest care, and at last here's our work. There's stress too. The first day of the harvest is always very, very stressful. We always fear something will go wrong, things like that. But after 2 or 3 days, I'm feeling better. I think it's important to respect the grape up to the end. Because for me, you can't make a fine wine if you don't first have a really good raw material. I think you always have to be careful about what you pick. You know what a harvester is? On the first day, they're ready to cut all the vines in the region. On the second day, they have backaches, and on the third, they get used to it and it's okay. But no, we can't complain, it's fine. We have really nice people, a very young team this year. I think we'll have a good atmosphere. Now we're on the Côte of the Mont d'Aimé. It's the most famous hill in the Sancerrois. It's called like that because ancestors used to say you had to be damned to plant vine stocks on a hill like this. And on this hill, there was the first vineyard planted in the region by monks of the Abbey of Saint-Satur. It's a fact that it was monks who planted vines everywhere. And the first vineyard to be planted in Sancerre was this famous Côte de Mont d'Aimé. The slope varies between 40 and 60%, which is a lot. The soil is made of Kimmeridgian shale. It's a white, quite calcareous ground. The stones are an agglomerate of shells. Moreover, the hill is exposed due south, so it catches the sun perfectly. The one characteristic it has, as opposed to the other hills, is that it has a lot of springs in the ground. So the ground is always cool, even if it's a vineyard. It plays an essential role. The earth really gives the wine something. Anyway, on calcareous ground, on clay or calcareous ground, or on Kimmeridgian shale, the wine has a flowery taste. And the flint ground, it has a really mineral one. It's the gunstone, the flint, and it really gives a flavor to the wine. The flint is the only aromatic stone. If you plant some Sauvignon on flint or on clay and calcareous ground, I'll know what it's going to taste like. I know that if I have too strong vines on flint soil, I would induce vegetal tastes. I'd rather have not too vigorous vines to really have these flint aromas. However, I know that if I have vines not vigorous enough on calcareous grounds, I won't have any aromas. I won't have these flowery tastes of white nettle. So I have to keep the vines a bit vigorous so they can release their flavors. You work in a different way in each earth. I consider that, for me, each vine is a person. I'm a doctor, I have 120 parcels, so I have 120 patients, and I treat each of them differently.
Is that the taxi that I can take here?
Yeah, where are you going to?
I'm going to the 27th Street.
Like father, like son, Arnaud took over the paternal torch, and it's now his turn to play the globetrotter.
Where are you from?
I'm from France.
French.
Yes, we speak a little bit of French. Not really. Ah, merci beaucoup. That's already a good thing.
In Hong Kong, Tokyo, Madrid, or New York, the youngest of the bourgeois spends 3/4 of his time abroad.
Thank you.
If they want to stand out, the winemakers have to travel to export themselves.
I'm in New York to meet our distributor, importer, to define things a little bit, to make a kind of report at this stage of the project. We're now in October. The rest of the year is going to be a very important period. And the beginning of the next year with the launching of the vintage year 2007 from March. So we'll try to define the strategy, to see what's important to settle, so that the salesperson understands the strategy of the bourgeois house. New York is a busy city, so it's synonymous of what we're looking for, or at least what we're longing for. We want to have our own pace of progress and evolution. And New York is a bit heterogeneous, very cosmopolitan, very active city. And I think that in some way there are some small bridges we could build between the domain and this quite extraordinary city.
Il est connu là, le monsieur avec qui on va déguster? Oui, madame. Et c'est un beau liquor store en plus, c'est 67 Wine Store. C'est des centaines de caisses de petits bourgeois. On est très actifs parce que tu sais la période vendange, c'est vraiment
With Maxime, his importer in New York, Arnaud goes to see one of the most prestigious cellarmen in town. Holding an attaché case, wearing a dark suit and a tie, even he looks like a young businessman. Arnaud has inherited his father's ease and plays